quick introduction. So you're a faculty member at Oakland Community College, right? I know you manage the academic success centers or academic support centers, of which there are
Correct.
quite a few, right? You're involved in first year experience, I think I saw. And so would you just give a quick intro of yourself for those
Yeah.
watching? Yep.
So Michael Robinson, and I run the Academic Support Center at the Auburn Hills campus at Oakland Community College. We have other academic support centers, and we have other academic support center faculty as well. And all of us at this moment are in charge of specific programs to try to grow and enhance those programs. At this moment, I'm doing tutoring, much because of the Penji, the rollout,
Hmm.
and what that's going to take, both technologically and just sort of managing wise and understanding of what that is. So I got a team together and took care of that, So we do have other programs such as supplemental instruction, which, we've all done these. All of us have done these for years, supplemental instruction, seminar programs, and kind of tied into all of this. Now we've created ourselves or inserted ourselves into the academic intervention program. And I can talk a little bit about how that ties into some of these things that
Great.
we're looking at.
That sounds good. Yeah. So I think we'll definitely get to that. And so I think it's always good to start at a high level. One of the reasons I wanted to chat is in our brief conversations in the past, it seems like, you have a good grasp on the goal is student success. The goal is student completion of degrees and getting into good work and taking the next step, right? That's the thing everybody's working towards. And we all have different windows into that operation, I guess, or that journey for students. And so this is what we were chatting about right before we started recording. And so thinking about success at a high level, maybe you could talk about your institution briefly, what type of students that you serve and what are those sort of successful outcomes that students are working towards from your perspective. And then we can start to drill down to the different ways that you think your work and your units influence success. So you mentioned SI, you mentioned tutoring and intervention. So we can start to drill down there, but from a high level, maybe share a bit about your institution and how you view, I guess, getting students from start to finish, right?
Well, just to kind of talk very briefly about, because I could go on for hours about the institution itself.
Yeah, right.
I'm always very impressed when I look at what OCC offers. It is, for a long time, it's always been a place that people can start, and they can start just about anything, whether they want to go on to a four-year college or they want to do something in the trades. We have just, I wish I knew the number off the top of my head, but, such a large number of degrees and programs that students can participate in. And anything from, we have a police academy and a fire and rescue training center and, 911 training center to the nursing programs and respiratory therapy and graphic design, and the list could go on. We could do this, like I said, we could do this all day. So I think it really is a goldmine of things that students can do, just to to get them started. And even at such a with some of the things we were talking earlier, the low cost of what a community college is for students.
Right.
That in this Biden forgiveness era and inflation and all of these things, that it's such an important piece within the community to create economic mobility.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I do want to sort of double click on that because I think that's what's so powerful about community colleges. But you hear all these, low completion rates and how, I don't know if you have a percentage on top of your head of OCC's completion rate, but certainly on average, it can be quite low for 2-year degrees. But it seems on paper like such a great value proposition, I guess, from a society perspective. 2 years of time, half the time of a 4-year degree, usually quite affordable tuition, and a manageable unit of work to sort of move yourself forward into some field. And so I'm just curious how you look at that. Like, why are completion rates so low when it seems like such a good value proposition? Or what is your view on that?
This is a hard question that everybody struggles with.
Yeah, it's confusing.
But I can't just say one thing
right
as to why it happens. But some of the things have to do with students don't know what's available. They don't know how much gas they're going to have once they enter. They don't understand the scope of what they're doing. 70, I'm in a ballpark in the 70% range of students are part-time. So, you think about this, and I ask students this question all the time when they start to come to talk about their academic plans is, if they're taking two classes at a time, do you know how long this is going to take you to get to where you think? And I think, when that suddenly it becomes 6 years, students' lives change so quickly. And in 6 years, it's not the same.
Mm.
So it becomes very transitory, no matter what kind of things can be in place without the right guidance and strategies given to them so that they know what to do when they're in year 3 and they're in year 4 and they still don't see the end,
Mm.
right? They just sort of get lost in the process once they're kind of underway.
Mm.
Community colleges in general, and especially more so with online classes, have they're notorious for not creating that connection to students.
Mm.
Students pull up in the car, they take their class, and they leave, or they click on at 2 in the morning, try to complete a few assignments, and leave. So there's not a lot of tangible connection. I was just talking to a faculty the other day in our SI program that always recommended SIs for us, and for his courses, but now doesn't see them. So many of his classes are online. He doesn't get to know who
Mm.
they are. So there's that connection is critically important to students. And
Mm-hmm.
how college goes about creating an academic culture
Mm-hmm.
is what can influence those
Yep.
kinds of things.
Yep. And that is a clear difference between like a 4-year public university or something and a community college. Is there's this expectation that you go to campus and you live in the dorms and those, and community college, it's not the way that it happens. So I think that makes sense. And the other thing you mentioned at the beginning is misalignment on expectations. So that's interesting because I don't know, are you involved in like the advising side at all? Have you done advising or overseen any of that?
It happens mostly out of just happenstance, right? Somebody walks in
Sure.
and
They need
yeah,
advice.
and you're talking about it, right? We're looking
Yeah.
at classes, we're talking about programs, and so that happens all the time.
Yeah.
And then that person comes back, so they start to find those people who are available,
Yep.
connections for them, and in the academic support center, you could probably ask anybody that's in on the conversations, is we are some of the most accessible people at the college,
Right. The welcoming
consistently,
place.
they know where we are. You can walk in.
Yep.
You don't need an appointment. We're just there, right? So we
They can
tend to
turn to
do
you.
that.
Yeah.
Correct. It happens a lot.
So that misalignment of expectations, or someone thinks it's going to take 2 years or 3, and it's going to take 6, and they get lost. On the surface level, it seems like why is that? How does that happen? It's a list of courses. There's a recommended courses per term, and you kind of just get through it, and here's your plan, and then just are you on the plan or are you off the plan, right? And so that's the simplified, very like probably wrong way to look at it. But how do you think that happens? Is there any opportunities to do better at the start? And I'll just a quick anecdote for me. I went to a UC, a 4-year school, and but even for me, I studied engineering, and I got 3 years in, and then I went to try and get into research for the first time. I wanted to like work in a research lab. And I went and talked to the professor, and he was like, "Great, well, you of course have like a 3.8 or above. I'm just going to assume that." And I did not have a 3.8 or above. And suddenly I realized I had already given away the research path for me without even knowing it. And so I wonder how this could be fixed. I don't know if you have any thoughts on this.
That's a lack of it's a lack of advising. It's a lack of sort of looking at the journey as to what the degrees can do for you.
Yeah.
So and I believe me, so many faculty at the college can tell you that I have such strong opinions and plans about how I think we can change those things. Again, you and I could talk for hours
Yeah.
about this one particular idea, but one of those things goes beyond just looking at the courses and the plan and what that's going to look like. That in order to stay connected to what's going on with their desire to, whether it's going to research or they want to be a nurse or they want to be an educator or whatever, whatever it is that they feel like doing, there have to be milestones built in. And I am, of a, huge proponent of saying, we look at all kinds of data. We know that, 15-week college courses are not as successful as 12-week courses.
Okay.
The shorter it is, the more successful in retention. that we get out of that. And I think it may drop down to 10, but then it falls differently at 8. Anyway, you kind of get the idea of that. And so when you look at that, I say that the college should be building in things like your first semester is at 12 weeks, and maybe it starts on the fourth week, right? 3 weeks late. And what happens during those 3 weeks? Well, now you start to talk about things happening at the same time that you are having your class. So, if I'm going to concentrate on the DFWs or the gateway courses, then I'm going to say it, and then that person's taking their math class at 10 o'clock Tuesday, Thursday. Then at 10 o'clock Tuesday, Thursday, there are things going on in that class where you have counselors or advisors coming in, student life coming in,
Yep.
people from the Career Center coming in, Academic Support Center. Half the time is your SI getting you prepped for the class. The faculty come in and have donuts and talk about what it's going to be about and how it's going to work. And you start to create that sort of first year experience right then and there, not extra outside of the academic calendar, right? You do it right within that. And then the next semester, you start to look at other milestones. Maybe you're going to do a volunteer experience in the winter. Next fall, you're going to do you and I were just talking about traveling. Maybe you're going to travel with other community college students for a week and go to, Spain and look at history or whatever and do something that's connected to a class you're going to do.
Yep.
And you can do these things for little money. And you do an internship. You have these milestones. I mean, I know because I did it in 2017. I went and taught English in Costa Rica. It cost me $350. Like, you can do these things. I did it for a week, right? Like, you can do these things, and you start to build that. Now you look at what a student's resume looks like at the end of their journey at our college, say at a 2-year, at a 2-year college, right? So even if it takes 2.5 years, whatever it takes, you've got volunteer experiences, internships, right? You've got different kinds of travel experience. You're making connections, research, right? If you want to do anything in research, you could be doing some research with one of the faculty for one of those 3 weeks. You could build all of those things in, which suddenly gives students a reason to come back.
Yep.
Rather than, here's your book, read about chlorophyll, come and take a test. Right. That's not doing it. Right. We know that's not doing it, but we're still doing it that way. Like that's just not right. And
Interesting.
So we have to think about what's the new paradigm for what we want education to be. And especially because there are, in fact, it was just maybe 3 weeks ago, there was an article, I think in the New York Times, that was talking about businesses lowering the degree requirement for jobs and actually putting more weight on experience.
Yeah.
So, we start to talk about that. Now you show students, look, we're going to give you this, but we're also going to give you these things.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that's a lot of questions on this stuff? Do you think that is required almost for businesses to start behaving in that way in order to feed that back into the college's behavior, i.e., you just said scaffolding all the basic education with these other rich experiences, give them a reason to come back. So that's good by itself. But then there's the next reason, which is like also to help you get a job more. And so I guess how big are those two things? Like, is it enough to just say, hey, this is good for student success no matter what, regardless of what the job market is asking for? Or how important do you think the job market is in this?
They certainly go hand in hand. And so if businesses are willing to look at you with an applied science degree,
Yep.
a 2-year applied science degree, and you've gone and done environmental research in Thailand, and then did an internship, just locally somewhere, that doing, now you've got something that even the people that are sitting at the university don't have.
Right.
See, and what we try to tell students is this doesn't mean you can't go to Michigan State. You're still going to go if you want to go, but now you look way different than the person who's a junior there.
Yep.
right? That's and so so we see that happening in at least there the article was talking about businesses shifting down in what their expectation of degree is, because if they don't, the cost of college is really going to start to prohibit that economic mobility within the counties and the states that they're working in.
Hmm. Yeah, very interesting. Let's use an example now. Academic Support Center.
Yeah.
So you have, okay, so you have, I think the framing to summarize what we've been talking about is you've got your basic 2-year degree, your series of classes, you study the textbook and you go in and you take the tests and you get a certification. And that's sort of like this big mass manufacturing process that's not very personal, right? And I think you mentioned quite a few things that can be layered and scaffolded around it to support success. Faculty comes in and talks them through what it's like to do research, or you have an internship built into the curriculum. Another big one is peer tutoring, and this is something that you are looking at a lot right now and overseeing a lot right now, and certainly Penji does. Most folks watching this are going to be involved. So this is the reason we started doing this is because I had kind of a transformational peer mentor in tutoring college who took me from, I was like a C student and I started modeling my behavior after another student who was older, and suddenly became a B or an A student just by like changing how I viewed studying and my degree. And so peer tutoring, very influential. And so I think that's a good example of, okay, so how do we weave something that is optional like this, or weave this into the student experience that in a way that gives them a reason to come back, to use your words, right? Like how would you think about the academic support center in as a way for them to come back, or a reason for them to come back, and how could we weave that in the right way from the start, right, and get them to use it?
Yeah, I mean, and this is really a multifaceted question. Um, One of the things that doesn't happen as well as it should is and I'm saying we in terms of OCC, right? And I'm sure colleges in general have the same thing, is they don't arm students with the information that they need to be successful out of the gate to make these right decisions. For example, nobody tells you that the pass rate in math, algebra, college algebra is 44%. Nobody tells you that.
So true. Yeah.
If you know that as you're signing up before you sign up, now you start to think about things differently. And you go, you better do these things, or otherwise it's going to get to week 6 and you're going to go, this is never going to happen, right?
Right.
You've gotten yourself into such a hole. So the biggest piece that we're talking heavily about now, and this connects back to that academic intervention piece, is really starting to talk not about the crisis mode, but trying to build an academic culture that has so many communicated built-in responsibilities that if a student was not successful, they would say, wasn't them, it was me.
Yep.
And so, that comes from an entire list of things that should be happening. And that starts with, of course, your high-level orientation programs, where you can find out about what makes a student successful, why students aren't successful. Is this a good idea for you as a student, right? To take this on and understand what that 2.5 year, or the 4 year institution, whatever, what makes it turn into 6? Are you ready for that? And you start to have that sort of transparency, and then it builds on all of those other things, whether it's the social media, which goes into your awareness concept, right? That the prime placement on the website, class requirements, to use the academic resource at least once,
Yeah.
right? Bringing classes down to the ASC.
Yeah.
Have the ASC faculty or tutor go to the classes. Are you targeting specific demographics? Like students. So what we're looking at it. So the DFWs, the people that are on academic intervention, what's the commonalities that we're seeing? And how do we start to deal with the preventative vitamin medicines, right? So that we don't get there, because we know once we get there, it's just not going to work.
Right.
We know that recovering students out of academic intervention
Hmm.
without severe overtaking what it is that you require them to do is
Yep.
going to make a big difference, right?
Yeah.
They're in
So,
trouble, right?
so moving up their first engagement, if I'm going to simplify it down to something, it's like getting that awareness of the problem, I guess, that hey, this is happening, this is the process is happening, I'm on track to not, without realizing it too late, so that they can actually act upon it. So maybe that's two things, though. Maybe it's the student realizing that they need something, is one, and
Yes.
then, so sooner the better, of course, and then once they realize they need it, knowing that there is a compelling solution out there, and then using it as well. And so would you lean towards one or the other being a bigger problem, let's say at OCC, for example? Are they both? And any
You know,
comments?
it's such so I had IE run a study for us. So everybody's talked about mathematics being the big hurdle. Everybody, their math classes and students can't pass their math classes, and this is really seriously affects retention. And so I was sitting there one day and I said, is it? Let's look at this for a second. So I had them run a study to find out if you took a math class in the fall, what was your likelihood to continue in the winter, and what was the likelihood to continue in the following fall, based on whether or not you passed the math course. And the oddest thing was it didn't make a difference whether or not you passed a math course.
Hmm.
So you start to draw some conclusions to that, which ties back into some of the other things I said was, yes, of course you got to pass. You're not going to get the degree. So we can talk about all these things that I just even listed out for you a second ago. But it's not just about passing. It's about that connection and seeing your purpose and seeing an end to
Hmm.
your journey and mapping that
I
out
agree with that.
completely.
Yeah.
So it's more than just that. So one of the questions that I would, when we talk about our groups of people that are in this, um, the conversations that we have, that I have been curious about is what percentage of their population that they can touch are they touching. So in our case, what that means is, of all the students at OCC, and it's about 15,000, how many of those students have at least one course that we support? Because remember when we were talking earlier, we have courses that I don't support. Welding, right? We don't have any welding help, right? I don't have
Mm.
any right? There are things like that we're not focused on. Not to say we can't be, but currently we don't. So the answer to that question for us is about 11,000
Okay.
out of the 15,000
Okay.
that students that actually we could touch. And we only see about 11% of those. So that over the year, we had about 1,100 unique students that came and saw us during the fall and the winter. So the question I have is that good?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like what's an actual expectation that
Yep.
makes good sense for what we expect? Not everybody needs you, right? We know this. Not everybody needs the support. Some people are
Yep.
fine in their own. And then those that don't, why don't they? What we're finding now is those that are using the resources are using it more, but we do see fewer unique students than we used to see.
Yep.
So it's hard to know, as that's kind of what we're parsing out. So,
Hmm.
and we've run all kinds of studies that if you use the academic support center or use the SI program, the GPAs are higher. We know that.
Yeah.
Like we've run several studies of that. IE is tired of me talking to them about that, right?
Sure.
They're like, it's the same,
Oh, yeah.
So
Quick question: would
yeah,
seeing data from peer institutions on that be helpful? Like to know where you stand relative to other community colleges in terms of total student participation in tutoring. Does that?
it would be. Now, the problem with that, I mean, I guess the question is, what do you do with it? Is it actionable data? The problem with that is you don't know how the data was collected. Is everybody's, pieces the same?
Yep.
Um, did they?
yeah,
The
you
guy
wouldn't be
can
able
run with the
to.
same parameters.
There'd be multiple grains of salt. Like there are different cultures, there are different student bodies, all that.
Right.
But it sounds like it would be at least interesting to be like, oh,
It'd
it
be
looks like the
interesting
average is
to
actually
know.
6%. Yeah.
Like if I said like we're at 11, reasonable, like if that number was 20%, I'd say we're doing fine.
Just
Like
because that feels good.
it feels right.
Yeah.
With the amount of students that are going to come, you've always got some that are going to drop because, they broke up with their girlfriend, their car broke down, their mom had an appendix operation. Like there are certain things that you can't control. So those DFWs are just going to be there. They're just part of life's
Yeah.
general, and then some people don't need you. So that's why in my head, I feel like 20%
Mm-hmm.
is
Would be
reasonable.
healthy. Yep.
Yeah, but maybe I'm wrong. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what that
Yeah.
number is, but I know ours is 11.
Interesting. Yeah. So something we've been thinking about doing is we have all this data from all the schools we work with. We work with like 100 schools, and maybe it's about 15 or 20 community colleges. And so having sort of a funnel analysis, which is like first is percentage of student body who have used your services at least once, or percentage of students who have even signed in. Actually, would be the first thing. It's like who have like signed in to book or seen your services. Number two is who've actually booked. Number three would be what percentage of like unavailability requests there are, basically students that are unable to find a tutor, right? And then number four would be retention rate. So how often are students coming back for service, like sessions per student, and like being able to compare those funnel steps to other peer institutions, I think could be kind of a cool way to diagnose, oh, we're low on percentage of students who've tried us, but we have excellent retention. So clearly our quality of our tutors might be good, but our awareness and our marketing maybe could use some work. I think wonder if that could be interesting for folks.
Well, the piece that would be misleading is they can't think about we have 15,000 in the institution. We saw 1,100 students over, but that doesn't mean I even could touch them all, right?
No.
Like so you really do have to parse that down to
right
with what is supported.
Target market, yeah.
Yeah,
exactly.
Like the people that I can see.
And the center would have to input that. The center would say, which is fine. Yeah.
I had to send to IE. These are the classes that we can support. What is
what percent
across 2 semesters without duplication, right?
Okay.
And so that's what I did.
Super interesting. Okay, let's talk then about more than the nuts and bolts of getting students to use a tutor at the right time, or use SI at the right time. So we kind of just talked through that. Maybe students. Okay, well, actually, just to get back to first of all to finish this up, we had the whole knowing the student has a problem. We kind of framed it as they might not know until too late, and you gave an idea of educating students on that this is a high drop, fail, withdraw course, and having them realize that from the start, they might be a little bit more cognizant of that, right? So knowing they have a problem, and second, lowering the friction to finding the solution. And so just to sort of take that, and then we'll drill down into like getting your services right now, ASC, in front of students. But so what are your thoughts on those? Awareness of the problem, friction of getting your services in their hands, anything that comes to mind?
So what do you do? Like you're asking what specifically can
what approaches do you take? Where can you contribute? Yeah.
Well, and I'll preface all this with I don't know, is 11% good? Like
that's where we got off.
I don't know if that's good or not.
Well, let's assume you want to do more. You always want to do more, right? So
we do all of the things, and I think I said some like send tutors out to classes, and there's website presence, but working with faculty, something I haven't mentioned, working with them to give credit for coming in for an assignment. We do have some of our professors that do that. Especially in the writing, you need to see a tutor at least once. You need to go in and talk to a tutor and find out what's going on with the paper. And a lot of times it's just because they don't want to read a bad paper, right? It's harder for them to read a bad one, so they want to, so giving some sort of credit. In other words, embedding the resource into the actual class.
Yeah.
The same thing goes with SI. Give credit for students to go to that SI session.
Yeah.
Trying to get faculty to pull away from that. I don't like to call it extra credit. I like to call it an assignment. Because everybody's like, that's going to inflate their grade. Well, you make it an assignment that actually has something else attached to it. You went to the tutoring session. Now what you need to do is just write up for me what you learned, what suggestions, what are you going to do differently, just so that there's actually something that they're doing,
Yep.
rather than just sitting there and, drooling on a desk, right? You actually want them to engage in the learning in some way so that they're walking away with something else.
Yeah.
And
Great.
that's helped get some
Yeah.
faculty to say, okay,
Yep.
let's give that a try.
Do you have a method? Do you have like an email you send X faculty? Do you personalize it per outreach? You build a relationship over time with them, or do you just at the beginning of every term email a faculty and say, "Hey, we'd love to, be part of your curriculum, and please let me know if you want to jump on a call," or like, how do you approach getting buy-in?
The latter there is essentially what happens to start. It's that time. Greetings, faculty. It's that time to think about the SI or and then we give them some options. I see them in the hallway. We see them in various places. So it's a little bit of everything, just like all of the other things we're talking about. You've got to come at it from so many different directions. I have current people talk to other faculty who are maybe new and don't even know much about the program, to get them on board and try to talk to them about what that is.
Yep.
I'm also heavily involved in the New Faculty Academy, which is, we talk about this and really talk to faculty about designing, teaching, and assessing courses so that it embeds all of these kinds of things, whether it's good time management, right? Reducing cognitive load and really getting them to think about what it is that's happening with their students within their own course. So we do make it a lot. So it's personal. It's also greetings, right? It's a little bit of both.
Great.
I wish there was time to talk to everybody individually like that, but there's no.
Yep. Nope. That is perfect. I think that's an area where like we can help folks. Like, we'll just maybe make a template pretty much of, hey, this is one way you could do it. Like, send this email out to all your faculty, and you'll get a few people to bite, and maybe 6% of them will get back to you and say sure, and then now you have more faculty involved. So,
I think letting faculty know that there's a lot of options for their students, whether it is an in-person one-on-one,
educate them that
group
this is actually good.
Virtual drop-ins, group thing, that we're trying to get to students in all kinds of ways.
Yep.
I'll come in and do a seminar for them. These are all things that it's a little hard sometimes to break the ice with faculty, but those are some other ones.
Okay. Let's dig into outreach to specific students, ideally somewhat personalized outreach to like something that feels timely and relevant to the student. I don't remember if you mentioned on the group call, but do you do any email campaigns and or text campaigns to market your services to students today? Do you have the capability to do those? If not, No. No.
The answer is, they keep saying that we're going to be able to text, but it's not available to us yet. Nor do they give me a bulk email for all students to send something out.
Okay.
So the best pieces we can do are in SI groups, where you've already got sort of smaller pockets of people, right? You've already got a channel.
Is that email, or do you have like group chat? Okay, great.
Email.
Would they allow you to send things and you just don't have the tool?
I think that's the way they want to go. The slow-moving snail of accomplishment. As things take a long time. There's a lot of demands on technology. At the college, it's hard to know when that might get into place.
Like, if we flipped it on in Penji, would they have an issue with you reaching out to specific class rosters and saying, "Hey, come in for tutoring"?
No, they wouldn't have any particular problem with that at all. No.
Cool.
No.
Interesting. Yeah. It's there's such a mixed bag where a lot of the time it's just, there's just not even the option to. People would support direct, good outreach, high quality outreach, but it's just, as you said, it's like moving turning the Titanic or whatever. Like it's just really hard to get things to the place where it
Well,
should be.
right along with that, and I think one of the features of Penji, which I have been really happy with, is that feature of looking for a tutor. Right, we don't have one, right, and so I get that
Right.
notification, and I do. I take those and I send an email. So sorry, Sarah, we don't have somebody exactly.
Mm,
More about what you're looking for, and I
nice.
might be able to match you up with somebody. And I bet 80% of the time, I'm like, oh, you want this. You know who's going to be good for that? Even though they don't know the content. So much of it is about study skills.
Oh,
And you
that's
have
really
to
cool.
be able to talk to somebody and to
Yes.
know that they're being heard.
Right.
When
Yeah.
students get the response, I know they're like, oh, thank you so
This
much.
is
No, I'm doing
amazing.
better now, or whatever. I know that they're very happy with
Yeah.
that. So I love that
It's really cool.
particular feature. In fact, I
Yep.
wish that was even a little bit more prevalent in the data dashboard or something, so that you could see
It's
them
not. Yeah.
instantaneously coming. I mean, you can always export the data. You know, right
It's
now
hidden
ours
though.
go to the ASC tutoring email, which I'm not on. Our parapros and
Yeah.
office staff are on that, so I have to always remember to
Yep.
dig into that. Right?
Yep.
It's minor. That's minor.
Interesting. So would like automating that be good, or is it usually you have to like personalize? You have to think about what the student asks. Like, oh, we don't have this tutor, but how does that work? That first email. Yeah.
Yeah, I think about all of my people that I have.
Yeah.
I look at a lot of things. I look at who the student is. I look at
Yeah. Yeah.
their age. Even, are they the 18 to
Great.
24? Who are they going to connect with?
Great.
And
So something that we're thinking about doing, I want your feedback on, but we, email marketing is not something that most schools want. Most tutoring centers would want to do it. Basically, reaching out to students in specific courses that they have great tutors for, that they can click a link and grab a time and do all that. So personalized kind of outreach on that way, where you are reaching out to a specific course roster. If that happened, almost like, just imagine it happening like automatically. Like you have a machine running where like 2 weeks into every term, a student gets an email like, hey, Jonathan, like we know you're enrolled in Bio 12, 11 right now. This is a pretty tough course, has a pretty high like drop rate. And we have tutors that are here to help you, and students succeed. You write a little template, and then it's just like that runs every term 2 weeks into a growing list of courses. And then they can either reply, and then you get that reply to your inbox and you help them, or they can book the time, click the link and book the time. If you imagine that like extended, where there's like a sort of a sophisticated kind of running machine where people are getting tailored things, or their grade dips below a C, and we have a live linkage to the LMS, and it's like, hey, we know, faculty sent us that not doing well, and we have a tutor. What do you think about that?
well, I think there's good and bad. First of all, sometimes we think that too much information is okay because they're not going to open every email. They're not going to see it every time. They're not going to react every time. The issue is the more that they get, really, the less they look at.
Yes,
And
definitely.
through Penji, they're getting the confirmation, they're getting
Yep.
a reminder, and now you start to add more, and it's like, oh, it's one of those, it's one of those, it's one like that. That would be my fear. Is
Yep.
regularity of something like that. Though we have a large turnover, it's community college, as we talked about retention rates and everything else, and so you kind of have a new incoming group of say 2,000, 3,000, whatever
Yeah.
students. Maybe it's just for them.
Yep.
It's just the first timers, right? The first time in any, the FIDIACs, as we call them.
Yep.
Maybe it's just for them,
Yes.
a certain demographic. So it's
Or those who have never used your services and or Penji before, right? And so they aren't getting all those confirmation emails. It's like get them activated.
correct. That's something like that is probably better than just something blanket.
Blanket. Yep. I totally agree
Um,
with that. Well, and you mentioned though how powerful it is for those people to get an email from you saying, we know you couldn't find it, but we want to help you. I'm just trying to think of, I guess for me, like the overall vision here is like you start college, and I think right now you just get a pretty generic set of communications from the college that nearly everybody gets or everybody in your major gets, right? And is there a way to, like, the more relevant and timely these things are, and the less you get stuff that you clearly don't care about and maybe wouldn't have cared about anyways, um, the better this would be at shepherding you from step to step. You feel like the college is actually paying attention to you. So do you think that the signals and all that exist if you were just to like craft out, okay, no, this student should get this set of community? If you looked at two students, two brand new students, and like tracked them through, and hypothetically you could make like a sequence that goes for this student and this student, like, would it be doable, or do you need to collect more data, like a initial survey to understand what they care about?
This is exactly like I have an entire plan about that I
Really?
have yet to get the people off the ground with. And that is about I could do it in 15, 20 question survey type thing about, oh, I know what my major is. I don't know what it is. I wasn't a good student in high school. I, have children at home. I'm working a job or whatever. That then once they answer questions a particular way, an entire beautiful color PDF document shows up in their profile about what their journey at OCC would look like.
I love it.
I There isn't anybody that doesn't, and it's very inexpensive, to do this, and it's an amazing piece that students could then, and any counselor or advisor could look at that and start to be able to help you, thus do exactly what I'm saying to you. For those that answer this, we would have their information, but trying to get the college to move on things, I don't know. I'm sure anybody that hears this that's at other colleges is probably doing the same thing with their head up against the desk day after day after day, that the solutions are out there and they're inexpensive and they're doable. I just don't know what it is that stops people from doing that.
Yeah,
I mean, what a wonderful document that students could have.
that's what I'm saying.
I
It's like it's nothing. It's not rocket science. Like,
not.
if they have a kid at home or if they're working another job, there are a couple resources or people on campus that you might recommend that they link up with,
Or things to think about, or if that's the case,
Or
you may want to schedule this way, or
here's an article we have for our students that do this.
exactly, and that becomes part of their profile.
Yeah.
They can modify at any time and answer the questions differently. I want to be a nurse. I don't know what I want to do, and I thought I wanted to be a nurse, but now I want to do this. The work is the people at the other end deciding what gets displayed, right? When you do that, yeah, it's some work, but okay, 4 months, right? 4 months. A team of people in the areas of the questions that you do could put that together.
Yep. And when you think about, I mean, there are people working all the time, at all these colleges, working hard. And this is not at all discounting, like, people aren't working hard. Like, it's just, there's maybe a lot of things. So when you think about why something like that doesn't get prioritized, is it maybe there's just more short-term, the LMS is breaking today and tomorrow this is going on? Do you have any sense? Leadership, like, there's always another project.
Sure, without individual politics and whatever else I would throw out, which is not, this isn't our forum for that. But I think every college has those specific hindrances and obstacles. And I'm the first person to say I don't know what it's like to stand in any of those people's shoes.
Seats, yeah.
So I absolutely defer to some of those
yeah.
things and just go, I don't know why this isn't happening, but
it seems like a good idea.
Seems like a good idea. And I other people I talk to, even about some of the stuff we talked about earlier, everybody says this is fantastic. In fact, faculty have said that's where I want to work. Like,
in terms of,
we were talking about the 3-week thing and the doing these things and they're like, that's where I want to work.
That's the kind of school we want to build.
Yes. And I don't know what to do about that. I'm just a guy in an office. I'm just a little guy in an office, and there's nothing I can do about it.
But I mean, it is one step at a time. As it's the ASC is doing a piece of that, right? And it's like optimizing that service to be more accessible, and all that is one thing.
And we've done tremendous with Penji this year. Tutoring numbers are up 20%. It looks like by the
Amazing.
end of the year we'll have saved $60,000.
Oh, amazing.
Like so it's done exactly as promised and predicted, right?
Yeah.
That these are the things that it's
The steps forward on
yep.
that front.
It's the
Um,
right call.
well, we'll have to keep talking about this checklist thing because this is pretty online with what we're trying to do. So I think like this first pilot that is going on for us with a few schools this spring, we're doing more of them this fall. And so if you want to do it or try it in a small scale, let's talk about it. But it's just laying out a sequence of communications, either one or two, for a specific set of courses that are optimized for that course. And we either just do the low GPA students in the course, or you do the students who are first time, never use your services or something. But sort of like, okay, you have the academic track, which is like, we think this communication will be relevant and timely for this student. And so let's do it, run it, and study the data on how effective it was. And then it's like, then you just extend that to more situations with a certain endpoint, right? Which is like, student has a kid at home. This is the endpoint, and this is when we should send it. And then once you've proven success, you can run that every fall or whatever. So I definitely would love to keep talking about that because I think it's
Sure.
a pretty powerful vision.
I was looking at there's a company, just another company that does this for businesses, and they do this to put together surveys and then produce documents for people. So,
Do you know what it's called?
I'll send it to you. I've
Well,
got to look because they just changed. It was probably bought by another company.
Actually, it's against our policies to mention any other company on these interviews. So
that I would guess. So that's why I drew back. I don't want to.
I don't. No. I don't care. This is not a big deal.
Yeah, it's just I just don't remember. It's
totally. We'll talk about it later. Not a big deal.
A year and a half ago that we were talking about it, and then it ran out of
didn't
gas.
happen.
It just didn't happen. And I just in fact, the IT person just asked me about it about 6 months ago, and I resent it to her. I don't know what happened to it. So
yeah. Good. Well, this is good. We're getting low on time here, so it's been really great conversation. I'm trying to see if there's any other notes that I wrote down that I wanted to follow up with you about.
We just as a final kind of note, we're really trying to look heavily at the FIDIAC students, that people that this is their first time at any college, and how can we make that particular difference.
Sorry, the acronym you're using, FIDIAC, what's that?
FTIAC.
FTIAC.
Yeah.
First
FIDIAC.
Time. Okay.
You'll see that it's a national term, right?
Okay, good. One I should know.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, I mean that's the most impactful thing. It's like, and that's where the equity gaps are the biggest, and that's where the challenges are the hardest, right? And so makes sense. So you're kind of continuing to iterate, I guess, and you're studying that population success and comparing it to maybe like the non-FIDIAC population and
Correct.
seeing
We
behavior
do a lot of
differences.
FIDIAC, non-FIDIAC, and take a look.
Yeah.
Sometimes the non-FIDIACs are worse than the FIDIACs. Like it's, and that has a lot to do with that running out of gas, right? They've been here and now they start to just run out,
Get
right?
tired.
And again, go back to the things I was talking about earlier. Like all of this is interconnected under an academic culture that, like when we talk about this is the place I want to work at a place that says to students, yeah, it's not easy. Math 1540, whatever is a 40, but we do it differently. And here's how we do it differently because of that. And so we're going to help you get through it because of all of these other things, and we see that from the community college idea because, you get, if you line up all the graduates in our state and then those that go to college, it's about 50%. And then you line them up from 4.0 to 0.0 GPA, right? I'm talking about your 18, 19.
Yeah.
And then you light up who goes to 4-year and then who goes to community college. And I can't cite you any particular study, that it's going to light up a little bit lower, right, on the community college piece. That.
Sure.
It's just going to happen.
In terms of high school GPA?
Yes. So if that's the case, then you can't do things like University of Michigan does or Michigan Tech, right? You have to do things differently when you want to change
Right.
what's going on. And that's
Yeah.
that's I mean that's kind of what I've been preaching, is we can't expect the same thing
Right.
15
You
weeks,
know,
and
and a big part of like startup culture and performance is it's experimentation, and you want to run experiments as fast as possible to figure out what works the best, and I think that's probably just true in general and in life as well. That's kind of like the process we all run all the time, is we try something and see how it goes, and so that is like taking the attempt, and that's also studying the result. And so I'm thinking in the college bureaucracy and kind of like the difficulty there, number one is like even attempting something is hard because it's like hard to get it off the ground. And then number two, something I'm suspecting more and more is that like the capacity to study the result is like quite low for a lot of schools and a lot of people. Would you agree with that?
well, I've been asked to, even pilot something, for example. Like, could you pilot? We're always talking about piloting these things, like the trials. Um, the problem becomes, and I've said, sure, you can pilot it, but what do you think's going to happen? And then you're going to say that the end's too low. And then now what?
Now what? Now
Like,
you don't know anything.
so I keep saying, if it's good, sound pedagogy, which you said something earlier that was just kind of basically said that, like, this just makes sense. Getting students involved, those milestones,
Yeah.
right? As we was somewhere in that conversation.
Yeah.
If we know it's right and we know it's research based and it's the best thing for students, shouldn't you be doing it anyway?
Right. Right.
Like,
Right.
shouldn't that just be, yeah, we could pilot this, all day.
Rather than proving it to yourself all the time,
Yeah, like, just, but if we
reinventing
know
the wheel.
it's the right thing, and we there are some things at OCC that we do where students can, like in an English class, they can get an extra hour with the professor. They pay for another credit. It's called an section. It means enhanced, and so if they have difficulty writing or a low placement, they could take a course like that.
It is the reason people don't. And we'll wrap up here. Last question is the reason people don't. And I know you don't know. Like, this is a hard answer. It's the reason people don't. It's right. You got good evidence for it. It's a good thing, but people don't do it because like it feels like the result in the reward almost. You have a reward. You want to see success. Like, it's so disconnected from actually doing the hard work and the action and paying the cost, so to speak. Where like student success, graduation rates, making it to the end, you lose touch of like this cohort that you did this on. You know what I mean? Like, it's hard to see the positive result that comes out of it.
Well, it's there are so many moving parts to anything that I've mentioned, and it sounds like when I say them, it's just easy. But no matter what you're talking about, there's a
Oh yeah.
lot of impacts to that, and there's a lot
Yeah.
of coordination, and that's a big job. And I understand that it's scary. It's easy to get lost in the complexity.
Yep.
Whereas just doing one of those courses that I said sounds like a good idea. But then they wonder sometimes why the graduation rates haven't changed, because you only did a pilot for a small number of students.
Exactly. And it's like, that's why it's so hard to see that metric change.
It changes it. Mm-hmm.
In if it does finally change, there was 85 pilots that all added up to this, and it's like hard to extricate that. I think that's one of the biggest challenges.
And we get students in these courses who don't need to be in those courses because they take that course at 3:00 because they work at Panera at 6. So they just take that course because it fits their schedule, but they didn't need that. So the data that they get isn't really valid. Half the students don't even need to be in that course. So,
Got it.
Anyway, like I
Very
said,
interesting.
I could do this for hours.
Yes, no, I love it. It's very good. Well, thank you, Mike. This is enjoyable. I'm sure some of the folks in the Penji community will enjoy it as well. And we'll continue to talk about this stuff. So Thanks for your time. Yeah. All right. See you later. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thanks.
Bye.